Hello, everyone. We are back once again in your ears with another classic in another conversation with an equally fantastic guest. We have Kim Morrison here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you guys?
I'm not too bad. How are you over there?
Good, thank you. I am feeling the joys of no work for a week.
I can well imagine.
Woo.
I can well imagine.
Yeah.
So today I'm not going to do the quote. I was very tempted to do the quote, but we are all here to talk about Poltergeist, the 82 version, not the remake. Just to clarify.
Oh God, yeah.
Originals only. So obviously, first things first. Do you like the film?
Yeah, I love the film. I think I saw it when I was very young, potentially too young, I'm not too sure. And I've just always had a really strong memory of, like, I guess probably the key scenes in it, like the things with the bit with the clown doll and the bit with the tree and stuff. I think when I rewatched it for this, I kind of forgot how much like family drama stuff there is in between. But it's one that I watched when I was quite young, and it's always stuck with me, and it's one of those ones that's never kind of lost its appeal. It's always kind of had that creepy factor. It's just always stayed amazing.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I think it's maybe not aged as well as some of the things that we've talked about so far. Some aspects of it have really well. Others date it a little, which is fine. I mean, it's 82. It's okay. Like Kim said, there's a lot more family drama when you watch it back, I think, as an adult. It's like a really weird horror film, because it's like, I don't know, I'm like, are you terrifying? No. I don't know, I had a really weird like picture with it, because I watched it again this week for tonight, and I watched it quite recently, like in the last like 5 years, and then I definitely saw it like as probably like a late teen, and I definitely feel like I had a different like view on it like every time. Quite age dependent for me, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about the whole family drama aspect as you get older being something that you pick up on. Having said that, I still can't look at that friggin' clown doll. That will never age. That will always terrify me. I hate it. I hate it. Yeah.
I think I noticed like the tree more. Like I think I noticed like this watch around, like how you see it from like the little boy's point of view, like as a big skull and as a big face. And I was like, oh, that looks, I can see that really well now. I don't know whether I just always missed it and was like, why is he scared of a tree? It's just an ominous tree. It's not a big deal. But like now I see why. I definitely think, like I said, some of it held up and some of it kind of didn't. So it's quite heavy on the CG. And I think it's probably the most heavy on the CG that we've talked about so far, would you say?
I think for CG, definitely, because a lot of what we've spoken about, and we say it, we're like such broken records, it's not even funny. With CGI, that dates in a drop of a hat, whereas a lot of what we've looked at is really practical. So you've got things like Jaws, things like American Werewolf in London, things things that are very practical makeup, practical effects. And The Thing, I mean, how could I forget about that, obviously? Whereas the CG in this, I don't know, I kind of love it.
Yeah, I do love it, but like when they open the door with like the parapsychologists or whatever they are, and that lamp flies into the lampshade and turns on, I was like, okay, on the nose, but like, all right. And then something like comes at her, I was like, this is amazing. It reminds me of, did you ever go to Disneyland Paris in like the 90s to noise? Or if you've ever seen anything from it, it's going to sound absolutely bananas, but I swear it's true. They did a Michael Jackson meets Star Wars 3D show.
No,
like
you dreamt
40.
that.
No, I didn't.
Be real. That's not real.
I did not. I've been told I dreamt it a few times, but it's real, and it reminds me of that, and I'm like, what is this random objects just floating?
I think it's such a weird mix of effects, because I think you're right. I kind of forgot how much CG stuff there was like near the end, especially with the big like ghost jaw monster thing. I kind of forgot that was there was a part in the film where I was like, oh, is this where that big monster is? And then I was like, oh no, wait, am I thinking of Ghostbusters? And then it turned out, and I was like, oh no, they're kind of similar. But like I think the practical stuff in it's amazing. Like the bit, even though it's not particularly like amazing looking, but the bit with like even the steak on the counter just like all bubbling up bits of the innards of the steak looks particularly gross. And then the guy like pulling his own face off and everything, and even things like
when she's like going up the wall,
or like when the mum turns her back for like 2 minutes and all the chairs are on the table and stuff, like it's such a weird contrast between it's like mad over the top kind of CG that very much says this film was made in the 80s compared to this like really amazing practical stuff. But you're right, I don't think the CG looks bad. It does just very ages it. You know exactly like what time period it's from.
Like I think if you showed someone that film, you'd be able to kind of pinpoint the decade, if not like half a decade, you know what I mean? Kind of like 80s, early 80s, done, sorted. I don't think you can talk about I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Talk about the effects and the practical effects without talking about one of the enduring Poltergeist myths, because obviously we're going to talk a lot about the myths and the curses, but like the skeletons were real, and there's so many documentaries on like the Poltergeist curse, which we'll probably come on to later. But I watched one on
Shudder.
It actually was on Shudder, Everything's like, Shudder.
Is it the Cursed Films series?
Yeah, it's really good. It is really good. Yeah. But like everyone says, like, you'd be so surprised at how many films in this time period used real skeletons just because it was cheaper than plastic ones. You know, and I think that scene is still, it creeps me out still.
Yeah, it's grim. It's
I think it's because I hate the concept of drowning skeletons or whatever, but I don't like the kind of
it's a really as well, because it's not just like water, it's like mucky, gross, skelly bobby. You're like, the whole thing is so grim. You know, getting out of there, you would smell. And it's like that whole thing for me. I'm like, no. Like when he dives in looking for Carol Ann, and he's like, he goes like full butterfly dive into that like tiny pool. I'm like, oh boy, you're gonna smell so bad. Grim. So in terms of one of the opening sort of the film, I think probably one of the most chilling openings of this kind of film, where it's all just kind of like he's having a sleep in front of the telly, the dog's just tootling around, and then there's Carol Ann being creepy by the telly. And like, you know, G sort of uttered the line before, and she says it a bit later on, but like when she's just talking to the telly and she's like, I can't really hear you very well. I'm like, hate that. What is it about kids and horror films?
Why We've got the Omen coming up, haven't we?
We do have the Omen coming up. Yeah. Why are they so scary?
I mean, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I know even like when I'm sitting downstairs and I hear her like go up to the toilet, she runs like, it sounds like Chucky, like running its little tiny like fast feet, and I'm always like, oh god, what is that? And I'm like, in a way, it's my child, it's fine. So I think if I came downstairs and she was like talking to the television, I might just leave the house. Like it is, they're just sort of in their own little world, and it's slightly terrifying anyway. So it's one of those things where when they hear her talking to the TV, you're like, oh, it's kind of passable, like invisible friend stuff, and they're like, but also that is terrifying. Get away from me.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Because we always kind of talk about the cultural impact of the films, and it's one of those things that even if you've not, same with Psycho, if you've not seen Psycho, you still know they're like, and if you've not seen Poltergeist, if a TV goes on like white noise, I'm always like, like no. But yeah, I think especially with, like you said, Kim, the kids kind of, on one hand it's like, oh yeah, it's normal, but but also it's completely terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I think kids have like that really, like in horror films. I don't just mean like in life, but like in horror films, they have that amazing balance of being like fine but also horrifying. Like in one, this is why I said, this is why I prefix this with in films. Like it's fine, because it's kind of that thing where like you've got so many great horror films on the basis of stuff around kids, like changelings or demonic possession or just being the devil or being, you know, like a 50-year-old small Russian lady or, you know, it's such a good film. That twist at the end where you're like, what? This is bananas. Love it. You know, then you've got things like parental grief and all that sort of stuff that like goes back to the kids. And I think that's such a great, like, I've completely lost the point that I was saying. I got so distracted by The Orphan. But yeah, it's been a very long week. Also, what I was trying to say was kids have this great sense of like innocence, but also they're kind of used as like a conduit a lot in these sorts of films, and you know they have that kind of like, she's got such a little like American poster child face and
she's a little doll,
voice. Yeah, she's like a proper little doll. And that's the other thing that's terrifying. Them little dolls. Everything to do with kids and horror films, man. It's so creepy.
Yeah. They always say, don't they, that kids and pets, A, you should never work with them. And B, like they have that because they're not cynical and jaded. They have like, they're more receptive to supernatural powers and things like that. It's
the dog in this deserved an Oscar, like, let's be real. Like, when he's, like on his little back legs and he takes the wall a ball, I was like, what a good little actor you are. Loved it. Loved that guy. But I think that, again, with pets and kids, they're such a good, like, vehicle for that horror that, like, we as adults cannot see. Like in The Conjuring. Is it The Conjuring? Where their dog's, like, going batshit and won't go in the house.
Yeah.
Like, he knew what was up.
Yeah, then he like, spoiler alert, it's never very well for the dog. Like
he knew exactly what was going on. They should have stayed with him and hopped to a motel.
Yeah, I think they do it quite well with the kids in Poltergeist because they've got them like spread across the ages. It's sort of a different, like Carol Ann's very innocent. She's not really scared of anything. The boy Robbie, he's terrified of everything. Like he's just an age, everything is scary. And then you've got like Dana, who's older, and she's just really you really kind of see her like experiencing more of the like trauma of the event rather than the actual fear of it. So I think it's quite cool that they have the spread of it rather than just having like a bunch of little kids that are all terrified. It's quite interesting to see it from everyone's angle. And even though like Carol Ann's the one that gets kidnapped, I think Robbie's definitely the most traumatized because he like witnesses everything. He almost gets eaten by a tree, almost gets strangled by a clown. Like he I kind of forgot that he got almost full eaten by the tree. Like that it's just his head out when his dad rescues him. I think I kind of blocked out how terrifying that is. But yeah, no, I think it's a good one where they managed to use sort of kids of every age, and I didn't really find any of them like, and I'm always saying like kids in horror films are really annoying. I didn't really find any of them annoying. What was it I watched recently? It was Hereditary. When I was like, the first time I watched it, it was fine. I was like, the second time the kids were so annoying. I just wanted them to die. But yeah, the ones in Poltergeist, I kind of I was like, I was trying to defend Hereditary, and I was like, I really like it, but the second time I was kind of less attached to everyone because they irritated me a lot more. But the kids in Poltergeist are impressive. They kind of they don't play into that annoying kid thing. And even though Carol Ann is a bit creepy, even though she's meant to be good, she never like turns evil. She turns evil in one of the films, doesn't she? She's got like a weird mirror twin. Is that the third one? Yeah, she's creepy in that.
I think,
but not in this one.
No, I think the fact that like we've seen this kind of film and we know her little American doll face, we think she is creepy, even though watching it like first time around in the 80s, you'd probably be like, oh, there's just like any girl from like the neighborhood or whatever. I think you're right though. They're not irritating particularly.
And they're decent little actors, right? Because normally kids are shocking. It's like
or they're theatre kids, and then every word is like rolled around and then yelled.
Yeah.
That's the worst. Like precocious little kids. I'm like, oh. Like the one in the Meg. I'm like, go on, off you pop.
Yeah.
Just get eaten by the Meg.
Yeah, it's true though. Yeah,
it is true. The kid in the Babadook, like, oh my god, I want you to turn it off. I was like, just feed into it. Like, be done, move on with your life. This is why, for legal reasons, that was a joke.
Yeah.
Yes. Talking about
legal
is it
reasons.
Dana?
Yeah.
I felt like she's kind of there, and then she's just really not that. She's not really there. She's not that present for like a lot of this.
Mm-mm.
She's kind of there to get like perved on by the pool boys.
Yeah.
And then like she comes back with like a hickey at one point. And then she's just doing like on the phone getting yelled at. And I'm sort of like, great parenting for this.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that they sent her away, or like she goes to live with her friends in the middle, which is for a horror movie is completely logical. Like why keep more children in the haunted house than there need to be? Like it makes complete sense. But yeah, you're right. She doesn't really do a lot apart from she just comes back to like get absolutely traumatized by the thought of her potentially dead sister trapped on the walls, and then she leaves again, and then she comes in time to see their house implode and then leaves again.
It's weird. Like you said, it definitely makes sense in terms of like a horror film, but then in terms of her just like appearing and leaving, you're kind of like, did they forget you were in this?
Yeah, they didn't really give her a lot to do.
No, because I feel like there could have been something exciting going on with like the phone and the phone cord, and then she's just not there.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Yeah. Speaking of the parents, then strange parents for a horror film.
Yeah, isn't there a bit when they're like just getting PR high?
Yeah, they're just having a sit in the spliff, and he's rolling one, and he's like pouring it all over the bed, and I was like, what is happening here? I'd forgotten all about that scene, so when it came on, I was like, I think that's interesting though, like, because it's such a contrast from like the things we've watched that are set like a bit earlier, where like the parents are really still like firmly in that sort of parental values of like, you do this, you don't do this, you raise your kids this way. But I definitely feel like Diane, the mum, goes on like the biggest sort of journey. I know that like Caroline literally goes to like another plane, but like talking in personal growth in the film, I feel like she goes from like
that's really tickled me. I'm so sorry.
I just really can't go. Yeah, just realised I got a pen there as well. Yeah, so she starts off like in a little Chuck Taylor's getting high and not really being asked about like the kids fighting or her eldest daughter getting like, hit on by the workman or whatever, to literally at the end having like grey hair and in a like nice respectable slacks and shirt combo. I definitely feel like she does the most like growing to sort of like try and keep her family together.
I think they're quite a good like horror parents, because one of the things that annoys me especially about haunted house kind of things is like the parents never believe the kid, whereas she believes Caroline quite instantly, and then also the husband never believes the wife. And so the bit where he came home and she was like, look, the chair flies across the kitchen, usually there's like a whole section of the film where the husband's like, nah, you've been in the house too long, like you're just making it up. But the dad was instantly just like, oh, okay, we've got ghosts. Like he was just like sat on the floor and was like, right, fine. And I think it's quite nice that the whole way through they're very like a couple and a family, and it's all
they're
like
definitely like a really like solid unit.
Yeah, it feels like very believable and nothing kind of like pulls them apart. And even like the bit right before she's about to like go into the weird flesh closet or whatever it is, like to try and rescue Caroline. So like they have a really like tender moment before she goes in, because like it's just I like them as there's nothing about them that like annoys me. As a family, you're usually sort of shouting at people for making terrible decisions, whereas they I think make the best decisions they possibly can. When they get her back, they're like literally like, right, we're leaving, we're not staying here. They're very as clever as you can be in a horror film, they try and avoid all the ghostly drama that's being chucked at them.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. Like it winds me up something chronic. And I think we said this in Nightmare on Elm Street episode we did. Like, they just believe the kids. As you should.
Yeah,
you know, like the kids say something's wrong and they're like,
had like a conversation with them. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And like you said, there's always as soon as you said it, Kim, like the husband never believes the wife. Or like the Rolodex in my head was like, yep. Like every film it's like, oh, you're imagining things, and then it becomes this kind of point of contention
it's
for like
always
half
lady
an hour.
hysteria that they need to go and have a lie down, or they're too delicate.
You just need to get used to the house, hon. Like, no. And
no, there's a demon in the flesh closet.
God damn it, Brian. What's his name? Steve. It's really... You in the Flesh Closet is my death metal band name, by the way. Just to let you know.
Mine's God damn it, Brian.
Sorry, what?
Mine's God damn it, Brian.
Jesus, they're just such a good family dynamic, and you never get like a healthy family dynamic in a horror film.
No,
you know, especially with kids. I think it's really, like you said, it's kind of as healthy as it can be. Maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree, and I think what's interesting is what I was going to say in a bit was that I feel like the films like Insidious and The Conjuring are like super like Poltergeist like came first, did its dues, and then like because of that we have The Conjuring and we have Insidious, and I feel like the family in The Conjuring are like another really good family unit who like hustled together to like save the mum. Is it the mum?
Yeah, because isn't it like the evil lady's like, you're a bad mom, and she's like, fuck you, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I was suddenly like,
ladies and gentlemen.
Conjuring in a nutshell. Religious trauma. Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting because it's such it's so like heavily involved with like American values and suburbia and awful housing estates where everything looks the same, and you know, this sort of like massive idea of this like perfect nuclear family. Because when you first introduced to it all, they're there literally like kids, picket fence, dog, pools being built. It's like all the American values of the 80s.
And it's the American values that they're just building it on land that was never theirs to build on in the first place.
Yeah, you read my mind, you know. For sure. And I definitely feel like a lot of this film is kind of similar to like the Amityville horror in the sense of like it's their like need for this status like attacking them, you know. That's what I'm going with. I was like, right when it's like, oh, they're being attacked by their pool and their tree and their flesh closet.
And like the brutal, fleshy dismantling of the nuclear family in the American dream.
Yeah. And it's that idea of like a bad investment. Like they've sunk all this money into this new house, and they find out that it's not only like haunted, but it's, you know, built on this land that was, you know, considered sacred land. It's like a genuine fear for a lot of Americans, especially around that time, that they've sunk all their money into this property. Like in, they do it again in like Conjuring and Insidious and Pet Sematary. You know, they get this nice house, but there's that crazy road, and then there's the Wendigo around the corner. Like there's this massive fear of putting all your eggs literally in one basket, and then that basket's like job.
Basket's like yeah. It does always make me laugh. I know it shouldn't, but you know when he like finds the real estate guy, he's like, "You do, would you build it on this land?" He's like holding his shoulder, he's proper shouting at him for building the houses there. He's like, "You didn't even dig it up or something." It just makes me laugh. The delivery of that, pure ire at the desecration of sacred land. It's so poorly delivered, but
yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting because it's not them, is it? Like personally,
Yeah.
they've like not run anybody over or done anything. They've just sort of like engaged in this lifestyle and benefited from it and enjoyed it.
He literally says like they kind of the developers knew, but then again, he's a property developer, the Steve guy, right?
He's a realtor.
And then the property developers knew that they were building it on this land, but they didn't say anything to anybody. So yeah, it's kind of like unwilling participant in your horrible, gruesome, gross, scary end, I suppose, right?
It's quite interesting that the dad didn't know anything as well. Like I feel like usually in horror films, you would find out that the dad knew as well. I think it's quite good that they made it that nobody knew. I think it's quite interesting, which I didn't catch until I watched it this time as well, when they're having the conversation up at the cemetery on the hill, the one that still looks like a cemetery rather than having houses on it. The guy, the dad's boss says to him like, "Oh, Caroline was born in that house, wasn't she?" So like they've clearly lived there quite a while, which is weird for a haunted house film because usually it's like someone moves in and stuff starts going wrong. So I thought it was I think it kind of tied it in as well, like the implication that that's why it was going after Caroline, because it's clearly been attached to her like since she was born and like waiting for like her energy to get to the right like level so that it can steal her or whatever.
The right level up.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was a cool one as well. Like it was an interesting sort of angle on the haunted house story. They're clearly like very settled. They've not made this mad decision like people, and I guess it's probably more an American thing than necessarily a horror movie thing, but where they just move like right across the country and nobody's seen the house before they move. They didn't do anything mad like that. Like they've just lived in this house forever, and then it's suddenly turned against them in a very short space of time as well. Like it all happens very quickly. I don't know what the actual time frame is, but from when like she's speaking to the TV to when she gets taken is only a couple of days. I'm not sure how long she's in the
I was trying to figure out how long I was trying to figure out how long she's like in wherever she is in TV land, because they sort of like by the time they go and see that parapsychologist or whatever they are, they're like, oh yeah, this is our routine, and they're like turning lamps on and like talking to the telly, and I'm like, how quickly can you establish this as pseudo normal? Like, I think I'd need at least a week.
Then it'd be fine.
Then I'd be like, adjusted. My kid lives in the telly. It's all fine. I thought like there's just some points of this film, like you said, is like when he's talking and he's yelling and he's like shaking that guy, and you find it really funny. Like when she's just seeing all that shit flying around the room and she has like a cup of tea and she's like clanking it. I was like, that's me. I was cackling. I was instantly out of like any sort of danger or threat level. I was like, what is this film? Such a weird mishmash of like horror, but kind of funny, because she's having like a great time when the kitchen's getting possessed.
Yeah.
And she got a kid in a little crash helmet and she's like, off you go. Like, she's loving life. Such a weird tone.
I think it's because, at that point, it just like nothing, it doesn't seem threatening at all, does it? And I guess it's maybe they don't clarify really whether she's a housewife or thing, but I guess it kind of gives off the idea of just being bored in the house all day. That something exciting's happened, because I think she says that she was like, it's me that was stuck at home all day with this, like you didn't have to deal with it. It all seems quite fun, just like the chairs getting moved or whatever, but then it obviously very quickly escalates, like a tree tries to eat their child, like that's nice. So it escalates very quickly into terrifying territory. But I think before that it's just a bit of like, oh, I don't know what's going on here, this is quite exciting, because even when they're talking to the neighbors next door, they're both giggling in the same way like they were when they were high on the bed. Just like, so I don't know how to talk about this. But so it's a weird one. They clearly just are finding it a bit exciting, and then it very quickly just goes scary.
It goes from like Matilda making pancakes, like,
it does,
to like pools of skeletons like, in closets, and it's not a good time.
No.
Matilda would have taken such a weird turn if it was this instead.
I have every faith in Mara Wilson, who
she like pulled it off, no props. So weird.
childhood hero of mine. Do you remember that shitpost Big Bird meme that I tweeted when he looks like Dr. Manhattan? She retweeted it from me, and I was like, don't let her know me for this.
Famous.
I don't want to go viral for that. That's shit. Got like 200,000 retweets.
That's it, you've made it now.
I done a Big Bird shit post.
You're a shit poster. You're a meme queen instead of a scream queen.
Right?
Make you a t-shirt that says "Scream Meme Queen."
Yes, please. Yes, please. And I think what's something that's really obviously like Poltergeist is a complete classic. You know, you see the hand on the TV, classic. I find it really weird. So it was written by Steven Spielberg. He was involved in the writing process.
Yes.
And it lost out on the score nomination for the Academy Award to E.T.
Yes.
And it lost out on the special effects to E.T. as well.
Yes.
And I just think it's such a weird duo of things to be competing against each other.
Yeah.
Right? It just seems, because he wasn't allowed any directing credits because he was like contractually tied to E.T. Not, you know, him personally, the film. And
thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. You're welcome. Also, actually, E.T. is probably scarier than the Poltergeist, because that bit when he's like in the puddle, and he's like a little
in the puddle.
No, the bit when he looks like Voldemort in the station. He's like a little fetus. I hate it.
What?
You know when he's like in the mud, right? You know, let me find a picture.
When he's all like white.
Yes, Kim, no, disgusting.
I don't remember which bit you mean.
I'm gonna find a picture of it. But I think like it's weird to think of those things as being kind of at the same time as each other.
They were
being
apart
in comparison to each other, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, because my Poltergeist Blu-ray that I was watching was rated a 15, but I think I read when I always get confused by the ratings in America, but when the remake of Black Christmas came out and it was going to be like a PG-13 or whatever, and people were like, oh, films that rating can't be scary. I'm sure loads of people were like, well, Poltergeist was a PG-13, which I think means you can go and see it with a parent, like as long as you're 13.
Looks like a 12A.
So you can go under 13 if you're with a... So yeah, like, it seems like a very family-friendly kind of horror movie. I think, to be honest, though, apart from the guy ripping his own face off for no apparent reason, it's not that like traumatizing for a child. There's not really, like, nobody dies. Literally, a bird dies in the first 5 minutes, and then that's it. No one else dies, and there's no gore or like actual proper violence or anything. It's pretty.
No, I definitely think that like even Jaws is probably more terrifying, and that is PG. I think it was initially an R-rated, and then Poltergeist.
I was gonna say, oh my god, what?
It was for you.
To be fair.
And then they revised its rating, I think, when they invented PG-13s,
right?
Because they were like, it's basically E.T. but with like some other stuff flying around.
Literally,
but
around.
You are right, because this is what I felt like when I was rewatching it. I was like, where am I pitching myself on this film? Because it's like, I probably would show it to like a 12-year-old and be like, yeah, it's fine, it's not that big a deal. But I think like, unless you're afraid of clowns, there's not really anything to be that terrified of. I think, like you said, like there's not really any gore. All the sort of like, because when the little boy comes out the tree, he's just sort of covered in like tree goo, and it's not even like, you know, he doesn't lose any sorts of limbs. He's not even like, you know, got like a broken arm or anything. There's no real physical harm to anyone. It's just like Dana or Dana or whatever her name is. She just has like huge mental harm instead. She's having like a bad time when they're like talking to her on the telly. She's just sat in the corner like hugging her head, and I'm like,
yeah,
poor kitten.
No, I think it deals with like kid fear stuff, like thunder and clowns and the trees and stuff, in a very similar way that I imagine like kids films, like it feels like very like it could have been like something like Never Ending Story or something. Like I feel like Never Ending Story is probably more traumatic than
definitely
this, but it feels like those bits that focus on like the kid fears are very like would have been like acceptable for a kid's film that was just a little bit creepy.
If you took the adults out and maybe their sections and kept her out of the telly, it could almost be like a kid adventure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kim literally listed two of my biggest fears there with thunder and clowns, I will be honest.
Thunder clowns are the worst of all.
I remember once I got into like an argument with my little 6-year-old cousin because he was being a little shit and not listening to me when I was looking after him. And he turned around to me and went, "At least I'm not afraid of thunder." I was like, wow,
shamed by
go to your room.
Oh.
But like you said, the threat is obviously very present, but it's not like this really visceral, gory, bloody threat. Like you said, it could be. I wouldn't hesitate in showing it to like a 12-year-old because I think it's, like you said, the clowns and the thunder and things like that, very explainable away, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's very that, which I think I've not thought of it from that perspective before, but
I think that's like a real big Spielberg thing.
Yeah, well, to be fair,
like I feel like you can see him in that.
Yeah, I feel the face pulls all Toby Hooper like that.
Yeah,
that feels like the one that he was allowed.
It's like when you've got like your wholesome mate and then like your spooky mate, and they come together to make something, and you're like, oh yeah, there's that guy, and then there's like Spooky Dave, and
it's like when you go out anywhere, basically.
Yeah.
It's still impressively like I still was a bit. I'm not very good with like flat out gore stuff in horror, and I know that's
shocking.
Nothing really on the scale, but it's just the fact that he just keeps like ripping. I think it's less actually him pulling his face; it's the chunks of like stuff landing in the sink. Actually what does it for me. Like that's the worst. That's the worst bit. Yeah, I think honestly, if you took that bit out, it doesn't seem like it would be like weird to show to younger kids. I can't actually remember how old I was when I saw this. My mum and dad are both pretty into horror movies, so my mum used to have instead of trying to stop me watch horror films, which didn't work, she went with a sort of like pre-approval approach.
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
She would, because I remember one year Halloween was on the TV when I was in about primary 5, and she was like, nope, nowhere you're watching that. People get stabbed with like knitting needles and stuff. It's not happening. But I remember her sitting me down to like watch The Shining and Poltergeist and things, because she was like, right, this will be fine. There's nothing like too violent or murdery in this one, so it'll be cool. So I think I did watch it. It was definitely like primary school, but I don't know exactly what age. But it was sort of a like, I think you can handle this one now. Let's go for it. But I do remember her arguing with me about watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She was like, no, you're not. It was on TV one night, and she was like, you're not watching it. And I was like, no, I'm watching it. Like, it's happening. You're just gonna have to deal with it. It was like the first time it had been shown after it got like unbanned from being a video nasty. And I was like, if you think I'm not watching this, you're severely mistaken. But yeah, I think that's like, I obviously said I have a kid as well. I think that is the approach that I would take with her if she's remotely interested in horror films. She's very into Scooby-Doo at the moment, so I'm hopeful.
Gateway, nice.
But I think it's just like, just show them the stuff that's like appropriate. Obviously, like it's
100%,
still a Poltergeist still says it's a 15, but I think it would have been fine slightly under. Just sort of like introduce them to it so they don't traumatize themselves too early and get turned off it.
Perfect way to do it, because I went the traumatized route. So but my mum is definitely not a horror fan, like absolutely like not a horror fan at all. She was very proud of herself last year because she watched A Quiet Place. That was like, well done, good. She normally just asleep, like she just falls asleep in all of the films. So but like my dad also hates them, so he like just cannot stomach them, but big into films. So he told me one day out of the blue to not watch this film because it was scary. So I was like, it's a weird thing to say. So then I put the telly on and it's on. So I was like, oh, I'm going to watch it then. So that was, of course, Dog Soldiers. And
very fun. Great.
And I saw 15 minutes. And I had to turn it off. And I had to watch Legally Blonde so that I could go to bed.
Even better.
Yeah.
But
I will.
Excellent double bill.
Yes, right.
it was either, I say Legally Blonde, it may have been Miss Congeniality.
Triple bill.
triple
A
bill.
plus.
Yeah.
Dog shoulders in the middle,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, sandwich.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember it so vividly. It was on my TV video combi, so I'd have been that young. So I'd have been at most 12. No, younger maybe less. I don't know when Dog Shoulders came out.
I think it was like 2003, two-ish. I just wrote about it. I should really remember. I think it was 2002.
Yeah, 2002.
Nice one, Kim. Yes.
Points to you.
Yeah.
And I only watched it fully as an adult probably in the last 5 years.
It's absolutely terrifying though. Like it is so terrifying. Like
Georgie knows, like my big
Yeah.
horror like triggers are all like limb related, werewolf related.
Limb-related.
Limb related.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen the video going around at the minute of the chef guy?
Oh,
Yes.
I hate it. I
Imagine how I feel every time that comes up, and I'm like,
literally, Mikey showed it me, and the first
No.
thing I said was, Heather would absolutely hate this.
yeah, I
Like,
keep seeing it, and I'm like,
immediately.
every time it like triggers my fight or flight, and I'm like, oh my god, turn it off.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember where we were at before. I was talking about Dog Shoulders and being
Pre-vetting
afraid.
movies your kids watch.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely say that this is a more family-friendly
Mhm.
kind of horror because it's got like a good message of like family being together and sticking together.
Yeah.
And I definitely think like Return to Oz is scarier. Whew.
True.
And also maybe like Neverending Story and Number 2.
That's more emotionally harrowing, I think,
Yeah,
than
but
any other film.
The Nothing. Well, I mean, the Nothing's really scary because he's a big wolf.
Oh, yeah.
I just realised why I found that really frightening.
Okay, makes sense, to be fair. Yeah.
Darn. Yeah, so the other thing I was going to mention is the television itself.
Okay.
So I felt like it was like a sort of, it's kind of like a big tool of showing this sort of concept of the television being a sign of like a disconnect in a family. Whereas now I think that's like a mobile phone. I'm putting this in quotes because it gets on my tits when it's like kids are always on their phones. It's like, yes, because
Do your
literally
crossword, Edward.
the entire world is on there, so why wouldn't I be? I'm reading a book, I'm writing a book, I'm doing a crossword while you do one with your pen. Like, it's fine.
I'm posting Big Bird memes on Twitter.
Yeah, Georgie's getting famous by shit posting. Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting because I think like it again ties into that like American dream, TV in every room. You're sitting down in front of that instead of having like wholesome family meals around the table. And I think it's quite
100%,
interesting.
Yeah. And I would argue, like not even aesthetically, but socially,
Yeah.
you couldn't make a film with the TV as that central part before or after.
Yeah.
Because it's that very 80s looking boxy. You can't do that with a friggin' plasma screen. No.
Yeah.
It's got to be that kind of boxy monolith that we all had. And I think earlier wouldn't have had the sociological impact. Later wouldn't have had the aesthetic impact.
Yeah.
You know?
And it becomes too like commonplace, I think.
Yeah. And it's hiding in my TV. It's like that thick. That's not going to happen. You know? Like, I think
Ain't
it's
no
interesting.
demons in there. They're in the flesh
Yeah.
closet.
I'm going to ask to sleep with the lights on tonight because the wardrobes are like at the foot of the bed.
This is not going to not make me laugh ever.
I think it's quite interesting as well how much of the story at the start sort of hinges on the idea that television stops broadcasting as well, which just really isn't a thing that like happens anymore. Like I got given the kids channels for free for a couple of weeks from my TV package, and I had the TV on at like 3 a.m, and Peppa Pig was still playing. So like even the kids channels don't turn off now. Like everything's going, but the fact that a lot of it hinges on when the TV runs out, and weirdly the national anthem plays.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what they were watching because it was always something weirdly like military-esque.
Yeah.
So when they're in the kitchen and it's like Carol Ann and her mum, and she's like looking at the telly like this close, and there's nothing on it. when she like touches her head and the telly comes on, it's like a war film or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird. And then it's always
Yeah.
like you say, like the White House and like the national anthem. And I was like, what you guys watching?
I like the bit in the kitchen where she's like, "Oh, don't look at that, it's going to ruin your eyes," but then she just turns it onto a channel and then leaves her with her kid, like her face like that close to
literally like a nose
you're watching
it, like,
something.
she's trying to get in the telly. She's like, hello, I'm here, let me in.
I don't know how they could sleep with that TV on, because I have fallen asleep with like static on my TV. Like when my video player used to run out when I was a kid, it would go staticky, but it wasn't that like fit inducing, like like an actual like bad disco, like kind of jittery robot like thing that was going over the bed. I was like, how are they asleep? That must be so
it's like when you went to like a house party, and if you were like the last few there, and like a film would go on at like 4 a.m. and you'd wake up to like the DVD menu. There's a very niche memory for you there.
Have either of you two seen Vivarium?
Yeah.
The bit with, I mean, the kid in that, no,
also the worst.
Oh, but like the bit with him and the TV and there, obviously massive Poltergeist parallels, but it's like you said, it's that kind of connection and those flashing images. There's something super kind of like mind control indoctrination-y about it, isn't there, that I think is very...
It's so uncomfortable to watch. Yeah. Like her face being that close and you just seeing it flashing on her face, like it's really... It's like so on your eyes, you can't imagine what it's like for her face being that close. So you can totally imagine her being like hypnotized almost by the TV. It's just very intense.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Definitely a good way of doing it. I think we've kind of like hit the things that we were gonna talk about. Unless you have anything in particular, G.
The curse.
Yes, the curse. Sorry, I just have to scroll down. Scroll down on my notes. It's on the second page. So,
was it really a curse, or was it not a curse, or was it one of those things people say it's a curse, but actually, when you break it down and look at what happened, it's a load of bullshit?
I don't know. Well, obviously, it's not a curse but I think it's just a series of unfortunate events.
I mean, I think it's an interesting one, like, because I saw that Shudder series as well, and I have also seen more documentaries on The Exorcist than I've seen The Exorcist itself for some reason. Which is always one of the ones that's talked about as like the cursed films.
Always, yeah.
I feel like things like The Exorcist and The Omen and stuff, it feels more like believable for it to be a curse, because they're like sort of I don't know, like tempting the devil, really. So
demonic based.
Yeah,
like
if he was going to come up and mess about, he probably would do it for people who were like making a film about it. But with Poltergeist, like the real skeletons thing aside, like it doesn't feel like they were doing anything. You know, it's not like they like dug the skeletons up from like some
They
must have got them some legitimate way if it was in a film. It feels like there's nothing that they really did that would like incur the wrath of something to come and curse them. It just feels very, I think it feels worse because it was obviously a child and then a very young woman died. That seems very shocking, as opposed to like if it was just like older. Like, there was a few older people that did die as well, but I bet if like Heather O'Rourke and the girl who played Dana like hadn't died, it might not have been such a big deal.
I think it's just like a case of coincidence. I think because they were like sort of franchising the film as well, like this is like quite a few years involved in like the sort of production. I don't know how long production was on the first one or anything, but like if someone had like died while they were making like Lord of the Rings, we wouldn't be like, oh, it's because it's cursed. It's just unfortunate that horrible things happen.
That's it. And I mean, like little Heather, it was the result of much the result of like much misdiagnosis medically.
Oh my god, yes.
I mean, Dominique Dunn's death was tragic and awful, and obviously speaks to a far bigger and more real scary issue of like, you know, intimate partner violence. But then the other stuff that happened was like these people who had minor roles, one of them died in really risky surgery, and I'm like, not really a curse, just no offense. The other one was cancer, one guy survived a plane crash, and another guy who had like a few lines in like one of the later films got killed by an ex-con. So I'm a bit like,
you're
they're not really, and they're like a lot later. Yeah, I think what Kim said's absolutely spot on, that Dominic Dunn, Heather O'Rourke, super tragic because they were young, two young women who died in really, really, really sad ways. But there's nothing that you can invoke with that film, if you like, in the same way that, like, Hev's weird thing is Limmy stuff, mine is demons. I wimp out. I cannot watch Paranormal Activity. I watched it once in the cinema and I cannot watch that film. But stuff like The Exorcist, stuff like The Omen as well, because obviously they're the cursed films, aren't they? It still makes me feel like heebie-jeebie. And you're so right. If the devil was going to come fuck about, that would be why, you know? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I think like if things aren't horror, people never say they're cursed. Like I'm just trying to think like I rewatched Glee recently on Netflix. There's like 4 people that were in that are dead, and they're all in like their 20s and 30s. And no one's like, oh, Glee's cursed, because it's not like a horror thing. They just like, they don't, you just try and make things sound extra scary. And I think probably people like things like Exorcist and that probably definitely like leaned into it with the marketing.
But obviously it's just like, it's almost just driving your hype wagon for you, isn't it? To create some rumors and plant some things.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same thing as like if someone passes out in the cinema or like throws up in the cinema or something. It's like a thing to kind of pass around and make people want to see it. It's the same kind of thing. Obviously, they didn't do that with Poltergeist because it's a lot more tragic, all the stuff that happened. And
but they definitely did it with The Exorcist.
Yes.
In a big way.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about Corey Monteith and Naya Rivera now, and I'm sad.
Yeah, sorry. It was the only thing I could think of that wasn't horror when loads of people had died.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, the way that obviously both Naya and Corey and the guy did Mark Salem kill himself? Yeah, I thought he did. That was a bit of a different scenario. But like again, like you said, 3 people, all young, all 2 of them were incredibly talented and good people, you know. It's like, and it's a show about choirs, so it's not cursed. Yeah, it's an interesting point to make for sure.
I definitely think they lean into that for a little free bit of publicity.
So our vote is not cursed, right?
Yeah, I'm voting not cursed.
Whereas I thought in that Shadow documentary as well, the guy that they spoke to, he was like the prop designer or something. I think he was something to do with the skeletons. He got really angry when they asked him if it was cursed, because he was like, actual people died. Like how horrible is it to try and discredit that as a curse rather than just like a horrible man killing his girlfriend and then like doctors being terrible at their jobs. Like it's discrediting their like lives to chuck it away and say it's a curse or whatever. So I thought that was quite an interesting angle, because I've never seen anyone get that like defensive about it before. It was quite interesting for him as well, because he like actually knew those people in real life, so obviously he's gonna be really involved in it. So
like imagine being Heather O'Rourke's parents and your little girl at 12 dies tragically and people are like, oh, it's a curse. It's like it's medical negligence. That's what it is. And obviously with Dominique Dunn, that was really like, it was the same year the film came out that she was killed, and that was horrific. But he got if you haven't watched the documentary, it's very good. Very good.
Just don't watch the Twilight Zone episode unless you want to be traumatized for the rest of your life.
That one was heavy, right? Because it shows the footage, and I was like, oof.
I could have done with like a warning, like any kind of warning.
I didn't watch that one.
Yeah, if you do, just brace yourself, because there's it's real footage, but it's
because I haven't learned from Dog Soldiers. So I'm gonna watch it.
Literally, like you said, it could have been like it's the actual footage. And I didn't think, I thought it was gonna like cut away, you know, how it does in some stuff. No,
but it's proper. I feel like when there's a traumatic TV episode on TV, every time they go to the adverts and back again, they go, just a reminder, you might get traumatized by this. So I feel like they've done that just somewhere in the middle.
It's odd because like even in like live sports, they can like censor that footage. Like, I know this is like completely off topic, but like I was watching the rugby the other day and someone got like quite a significant injury. And as much as you'd have seen it the minute it happened, in all of the recaps, they moved everything so that it wouldn't be seen again beyond that one like millisecond. So they could have done that.
Yeah, it's a really good documentary. Obviously, I cried at the Crow episode. Obviously.
Oh my god,
but, my baby boy. But yeah, it's like you said, the discrediting kind of their lives, their legacies is very pertinent, I think, to bring up.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we go to the comments from the community?
Yeah.
Okay, so the people, our friends over at Nerds Chatting, said the film mortified me as a child. The scene where the guy starts pulling at his face in the mirror, oh my, still one of the best horror movies and genuinely chilling. A solid watch.
Yeah. I love how that like terrified me as a child, and we were like, yeah, our kids can watch it.
And there and just to continue that, Seb Reeves said it scared the heck out of him as a child.
We all like
how bad people and the tree monster are a combination of childhood terrors. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, I think if you're not frightened of trees and clowns and thunder, you should be fine.
I'm living proof of the effects of that film, actually.
You guys ready for the mystery question?
Shit, I forgot about this.
Mystery question. Okay. It is a two-part. Okay. Would you rather be a poltergeist or a friendly ghost?
Poltergeist, more fun.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my immediate comparison in my head is I'm just thinking of like the guy out The Conjuring 2 versus like Casper. Which one would I rather be? Yeah, I think Poltergeist are more likely to be able to like pick things up and mess about with people. That would probably be more fun. Yeah,
because if you were a friendly ghost, people wouldn't know that. People would see you and assume that you were not a friendly ghost. So you'd have like the effort of being like, no, I'm chill. Whereas if you're a poltergeist, you'd be like throwing stuff across rooms, like
chill.
You know?
Okay, so as your poltergeist selves, who or where would you haunt?
Does it have to be like thematically speaking in terms of poltergeist normally attach themselves to younger/teenage? It can be anywhere.
You are the result of a trauma in and around the person or place. So anywhere. Anywho.
Oh, I mean, it would probably be a library for me.
Nice.
Throwing books at people, yeah. It's basically my day job. Yeah. I don't throw books at people at work.
For legal reasons? That was a joke.
Yeah, for legal reasons, don't fire me.
Oh my god, you could give people paper cuts.
If I was like a poltergeist and I could touch things, I'd maybe like haunt like a hobby craft, because then I could just like knit. I could just leave like random hats and gloves about like places.
So wholesome in your
I'm
poltergeist.
half friendly, half friendly poltergeist.
I love that. Or a museum. A museum will be super fun, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All the different hats.
Yeah. Possess the dinosaur skeletons.
Yeah. The museum poltergeist mashup. I love it.
I love that you guys went for like the sort of like evil option, but you're just doing cute things with them. Apart from the book throwing.
Apart from like lobbing blunt objects at people, yeah.
Nice. Yes. I like it.
I love it.
Good. This has been Poltergeist.
It has.
It has. It's been a good time. Thank you very much for joining us, Kim.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime. Where can the folks at home catch up with what you're up to?
So if you follow me on Twitter, I'm at WickedSister69. I post most of my stuff on there, but I'm a regular contributor for Nightmare on Film Street and for Ghouls magazine, which just launched. So yeah, you can catch me on there, usually making ridiculous lists about very specific injuries.
Love them lists. I love them lists.
I'm writing one right now about broken bones in horror, which meant I had to think for longer than I wanted to about the rack scene in Saw 3, so I'm not happy. I refused to rewatch it on YouTube to reacquaint myself with that. I'm just going to write about it. I watched it once in the cinema in 2006, and that's the only time I've seen it, and it's still Makes
That's
me feel like I'm
enough.
going to be sick. I was planning on doing a Saw rewatch recently. I bought the last 2 DVDs I didn't have, but then I'm like, oh, that means I'm going to have to watch Saw 3 again. So yeah, I mostly write about that, or I have a column all about mothers and horror, so I'll probably be writing about Poltergeist pretty soon, I would imagine.
Nice.
And yeah, that's it. That's probably the best place is Twitter, with my username that I've been stuck with since I picked an email address when I was 16.
It's
Nice.
fantastic. I love it.
Love it.
I refuse to change it. I'm like, it's everything now. I need to just own it rather
Yes.
than be embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
So.
I love it. Embrace
Thanks.
that.
I love it.
Cool. We'll stick the links in the boxes as per usual, so you can click on them and find more about us, more about Kim, more episodes and whatnot. And we'll be back next week with Interview with the Vampire.
Yes.
Nice.
Amazing.
Going to some fancy boys.
The dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very drastically different films.
You're going to get a lot of comments from Resident Pervert, I think, in the next episode.
Nice. Oh yeah, she didn't appear in this one, not shockingly. We have one resident pervert who sends us their comments on the films we do each week, and it's just Georgie yelling about the thirst for all the hot guys and gals in the films. Basically, yeah.
Nice.
So, all right, we will see you again soon, and yeah, stay safe, be good, stay a good distance away from the telly.
Yeah, and other people. You know,
And other
And your
people.
flesh closet.
And the
don't-
flesh closet. The cursed flesh closet.
Don't go into the flesh closet. All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.